Hi, welcome back. Today we shall be reading Chapter 36 The Land of Fairies. Shiva, Gopal, and Kurush had been riding for a little over a month. Late winter made travelling through the harsh mountainous terrain a test of will. Shiva, who had lived most of his life in the highlands of Tibet, managed the expedition quite well. But Gopal, who was used to the moist heat of the plains, was struggling due to the cold and rarefied atmosphere. "We are here," said Kurush out of the blue one day as he raised his hand. Shiva pulled his reins. They had been on a narrow pathway no more than 4 or 5 meters wide. Shiva dismounted from his horse, tied the reins to a rocky outcrop, and walked up to Gopal to assist him. He tied Gopal's horse, helped him sit with his back propped up against the mountain side, and offered his water to the chief Vasudev. Gopal sipped the life-nurturing fluid slowly. Having helped his friend, Shiva looked around. To the left was a sheer rocky mountainside, almost as steep as a cliff, which extended upwards for several hundred meters. To the right was a steep drop to a dry valley far below. As far as the eye could see, there was no sign of any life anywhere. No human habitation, no animal, not even the few valiant plants and trees that they had seen at lower heights. Shiva looked at Gopal with raised eyebrows and whispered, "We are here." Gopal gestured towards Kurush. The Parihan was carefully running his hands over the mountain wall, his eyes shut, trying to locate something. He suddenly stopped. He had found what he was seeking. Shiva had moved up in the meantime and saw the faint indentation of a symbol on the mountainside. A figurative flame he had come to recognize. Fravashi. Kurush pressed the ring on his index finger into the center of the symbol. A block of rock the size of a human head emerged from the right. Kurush quickly placed both his hands on the rock, stepped back to see some leverage, and pushed hard. Shiva watched in wonder as the mountain seemed to come to life. A substantial section, nearly 4 meters across and 3 meters wide, receded inwards and then slid aside, revealing a pathway going deep into the mountain's womb. Kurush turned towards Shiva and indicated they were good to go. Shiva helped Gopal onto his horse and handed the reins to his friend. As he walked towards his horse, he noticed that while the rocky outcrop where he had tethered his animal looked natural, in fact, it was man-made. Shiva mounted his horse and quickly joined Gopal and Kurush, riding into the heart of the mountain. The rocky concealed entrance had closed behind them just as smoothly. It would have been pitch dark inside except for a flaming torch that was maintained by the Parihans on one of the walls, which threw its light ahead for a few meters. Beyond that, the light lost its struggle against the omnipresent darkness of the cavernous pathway. Kurush picked 3 unlit torches from a recess on the wall, lit them, and handed one each to Gopal and Shiva. Thereupon, he swiftly rode ahead, holding his torch aloft. Shiva and Gopal kicked their horses and made haste after him. Soon the pathway split into a fork, but Kurush unhesitatingly led them up one, disregarding the other. Just like the Nagas in the Dandak forest, the Vayuputras too had ensured that in the unlikely scenario of any unauthorized person finding his way into the secret pathway, he would inevitably get lost within the mountain, unless led by a Vayuputra guide. Shiva expected many more such misleading paths along the way. He was not disappointed. A half-hour later, after a long monotonous ride, the travelers emerged on the other side of the mountain, almost blinded by the sudden onslaught of bright sunlight. Even as his eyes adjusted, Shiva's jaw dropped with amazement as he took in what lay ahead. The other side of the mountain was dramatically different from what they had seen up to now. A broad winding road had been cut into the sides of the mountain. Called the Rudra Avenue by the local Parihans, a beautifully carved railing ran along its side, affording protection for horses or carriages from slipping off the road to certain death in the sheer ravine below. The Rudra Avenue wound its way along the steep mountain in a gentle descent to the bottom. The valley itself, naturally dry as a bone, was surrounded on all sides by steep mountains. The splendor of nature notwithstanding, what Shiva was struck by was what the Parihans had done with it. Hidden away from prying eyes, surrounded by unconquerable mountains, in this secluded spot, they had truly created a land of fairies, Pariha. The Rudra Avenue ended at the base of a terrace. This platform, though, unlike the ones built by the Meluhans, had not been constructed as protection against flood. The problem with water in Pariha was not one of excess, but that of scarcity. The platform had been built to create a smooth base atop the rough, undulating mountainous valley, allowing for the construction of massive structures upon it. The city of Pariha had been built on it. Kurush, Gopal and Shiva approached the platform at the lowest point of the valley. The platform was at its tallest here, nearly 20 meters high. A massive ceremonial gate had been erected at what was obviously the only entry point into the city. The road was surrounded by high walls on both sides and narrowed down as it led to the well-barricaded gate. Looking admiringly around, the warrior in Shiva understood that the approach to the city gates, perforce, funneled an attacking force into a narrow neck, thus making defense easy for the Parihans. The massive ornate city gates had been hewn out of the local brown stone that Shiva had frequently seen en route. The gate itself was flanked on either side by large pillars on which crouched two imposing creatures, as if ready to pounce in defense of their city. The unfamiliar creature carried the head of a man on the body of a lion and sprouted the broad wings of an eagle. Parihan pride was unmistakable in the features of the face: a sharp forehead held high, a hooked nose, neatly beaded beard, a drooping moustache, and lengthy locks emerging from under a square hat. The aggressive, warrior-like visage was tempered somewhat by calm, almost friendly eyes. Shiva noted that Kurush's conversation with the gatekeeper was done. He walked back and spoke respectfully to Gopal. "My lord, the formalities have been completed. Please accept my apologies that it took us so long to get here. Shall we?" "There's no need for an apology, Kurush," said Gopal politely. "Let's go." Shiva quietly followed Kurush and Gopal, keenly aware of the gatekeeper's quizzical, perhaps even judgmental eyes. They crossed a massive tiled courtyard, guiding their horses onto the cobbled pathway leading to the top of the platform. The gradient was gentle, making it easy to negotiate the single hairpin bend they encountered. A few pedestrians sauntered along the accompanying steps, provided with long treads to facilitate the climb. All along the pathway, the rock face of the platform had been carved and painted. Against the relief of glazed tiles, sculpted Parihans gazed at passers-by with their distinguished features: long coats and square hats. As if from nowhere, water rippled down the center of the rock face, leaving a lilting musical sound in its wake. Shiva made a mental note to ask Gopal the secret of this water source in the harsh desert. Shiva's questions were quickly forgotten as he reached the top and exclaimed with wonder at the sheer beauty of all that he beheld. By the holy lake! He had just had his first vision of the exquisite symmetrical gardens of Pariha. These artificial heavenly creations were so extraordinary that Parihans had named them Paradesa, the walled place of harmony. The Paradesa extended along the central axis of the rectangular city, with buildings built around it. The park and the city extended all the way to the edge of a great mountain at the upper end of the valley, which had been named the Mountain of Mercy by the Asuras. A water channel emerged from the heart of the mountain, flowing through the garden in an unerringly straight line, filling up large square ponds intermittently. The ponds themselves had flamboyant fountains constructed in the center, spewing water high into the air. The left and right halves of the garden, divided by the water channel, were perfect mirror images of each other. The entire expanse was covered with a carpet of thick and carefully manicured grass, which provided the base around which flower beds and trees were arranged in perfect harmony. The flora had obviously been imported from around the world. Roses, narcissus, tulips, lilacs, jasmine, orange, and lemon trees dotted the landscape in poetic profusion. Shiva was so lost in the beauty of the garden that he didn't hear his friend call. "Lord Neelkant," repeated Gopal. Shiva turned to the chief Vasudev. "We can always come back here, my friend, but for now we need to retire to our guest house." Shiva and Gopal had been housed in the state guest house, reserved for elite visitors to Pariha. Here too, the duo encountered the Parihan obsession with beauty and elegance. Dismounting from their horses, Shiva and Gopal strode into the building. The entrance led to a wide, comfortable veranda lined with neat rows of perfectly circular columns providing support to a great stone ceiling. The columns were colored a vivid pink all the way to the top, at which point, near the ceiling, it contained discreet etchings of animal figurines. Shiva squinted to get a better look. "Bulls," remarked Shiva. Bulls and cows were sacred amongst the Indians, central to the spiritual experience of life. "Yes," confirmed Gopal. "Bulls are revered by the Parihans as well. They are symbolic of strength and virility." As they reached the other end of the veranda, they encountered 3 elegantly dressed Parihans. The one in the front held out a tray with warm, moistened and scented towels. Gopal immediately picked one up and went on to wipe the accumulated dust and grime from his face and hands. Shiva followed his example. A Parihan woman walked up to Gopal, bowed low and spoke softly. "Welcome, honored Chief Vasudev Gopal. We can scarce believe our good fortune is hosting the representative of the great Lord Ram." "Thank you, my lady," said Gopal, "but you have me at a disadvantage. You know my name, and I do not know yours." "My name is Bhamandokt." "The daughter of Bhaman," said Gopal, for he was familiar with their old language, Aveshta. Bhamandokt smiled. "That is one of the meanings, yes, but I prefer the other one." "And what is that?" "A maiden with a good mind." "I am sure you live by that name, my lady." "I try my best, Lord Gopal." Gopal smiled and folded his hands into a namaste. Unlike most Parihans who had studiously ignored Shiva all this time, Bhamandokt addressed the Neelkant with a polite bow. "Welcome, Lord Neelkant. I do hope we have given you no cause for complaint." "None at all," said Shiva graciously. "I know you are here on a mission," said Bhamandokt. I do not make so bold as to speak for my entire tribe, but I personally hope that you succeed. India and Pariha are intertwined by ancient bonds. If something needs to be done that is in the interest of your country, I believe it is our duty to help. It is the dictate that Lord Rudra laid down for us." Shiva acknowledged the courtesy and held his hands together in a namaste. "That spirit is returned in full measure by my country, Lady Bamandokht." Bamandokht glanced at a woman standing at the back towards the end of the lobby. Shiva's eyes followed her and rested on a tall woman, dressed in traditional Parihan garb. Despite the attire, it was obvious that she wasn't native to Pariha. Bronze complexioned with jet black hair, she had large attractive doe eyes and a voluptuous body, unlike the slender locals. She was a gorgeous woman indeed. "Lord Shiva," said Bamandokht, pulling the Nilkant's attention back, "my aide will show you to your chamber." "Thank you," said Gopal. As Gopal and Shiva were escorted away, the Nilkant looked back. The mystery woman had disappeared. Shiva and Gopal were led into a lavish suite of rooms with 2 separate bed chambers. The suite had been furnished with every luxury imaginable. Door-length windows at the far end opened onto a huge balcony with large recliners and a couple of cloth-covered poufs that could double up as tables. The living room contained a mini fountain on the side, its cascading waters creating a soothing tinkle. Delicately woven wall-to-wall plush carpets covered every inch of the floor. Bolsters and cushions of various sizes were strewn on the carpets at several corners, making comfortable floor seating areas. An ornately carved oak table was placed in one corner, accompanied with cushioned chairs on the side. Another corner was occupied by Parihan musical instruments, keeping in mind the role of leisure in hospitality. Lavish gold and silver-plated accoutrements decorated the mantelpiece and shelves of the walls. This was ostentatious, even by the standards of Swadweepan royalty. The 2 bedrooms had comfortable soft beds with silk linen. Bowls of fruit had been thoughtfully placed on low tables next to the beds. Even clothes had been specially ordered and placed in cupboards for the 2 guests, including traditional Parihan cloaks. Shiva looked at Gopal with a twinkle in his eye and chortled, "I think this miserable quarters will have to suffice." Gopal joined in mirthfully.